Hey there. So today we're going back. I guess if you watch the other video, this one's coming out right after it, so same day. We're kind of going to build up this mission that's going to be the Germans crossing the bridge at Kalak here, and coming across. By the way, if I mispronounce any names of cities or anything like that, like please feel free to correct me. Like I barely speak English well, so um, yeah, you get the idea. Um, so the last video, we really kind of just went through the details of what the little pre-built modules are. And I want to reinforce that like the way that those are set up is very flexible and you can make considerable changes. And what we'll be showing in some future videos, not this one, is things like we'll turn the air units, which are really just generic, they just fly, and do whatever the type of unit that they are. You know, Stukas will dive bomb and HE-111s will level bomb and 190s will get shot down because they try to turn fight, and F4s will shoot you from great distances, like, just like you expect. So, uh, et cetera, et cetera. But you can turn that air unit into a very specialized unit. Like you could convert it with very limited effort into something that was like surveillance. Like it would be like flying very high and circling a specific area and succeeding by getting through that circle and landing. Or you could turn it into a like carpet bomber. Like really all kinds of things. You could turn the 190s into Jabba fighters, where the AI does a very very good job. Um, in fact, the 190 AIs are really great. They really are. They do some cool stuff. Except for sometimes fighting when they shouldn't, but whatever. Like other aircraft. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take those little pre-built modules, aside done, um, and we're going to build up a single phase. We're going to make a single phase. And that's all this video is going to be. And if you remember from the first video, so this is the third, we had 3 phases of battle, and that was on that little tiny map. But that's just because it was easy to build on the tiny map and didn't take so long. And the way that the phases work is that only one phase is active at a time, and so it was set up so that the mission would always start in the dead center, and the Germans were moving north, and the Russians were attempting to defend, pushing back south. And so, like, if that first central battle was won by the Germans, then it would move to the northern phase, and it would have moved south otherwise. And it can continue to volley back and forth that way. You can kind of do anything you want with phases. Additionally, the kind of rule that I spoke of last time, that phases were just one at a time, was kind of a lie, but kind of not. Right now, I'm designing my phases to be like at the maximum number of units that the game can handle for performance. But you could make the phases be half that and have 2 phases active at once to have like 2 totally different battles going on simultaneously. Or there could be something totally amazing and we could throw like way more AI in this game somehow in the distant future. I'm not saying that's something that would happen soon. I'm sure the reworking to increase the number of active units is beyond a daunting task. But if that was to happen, this system is set for that. This system is set for scalability so that you could, when we're going to build up this one phase here, we could be running lots of these simultaneously if the system could hang. So in other words, scalability is not a limitation of this automata system, but performance will, of course, always be a limitation for all time forever. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull in all our modules and build a phase. And what we're going to do is we're going to build exactly the same generic battle phase that I used in the very first. I know that's not exciting, but that's what we're going to start. And I want to show you how, like, in the package that's going to be downloadable soon, I think probably in maybe 2 days or something like that, there will be a saved mission instead of just like these groups that I'm pulling in right now. But there will be a saved mission that has the 3-phase generic battle setup. And that's really, really, really handy for starting a brand new battle. Like, we're going to do this here at Kalak. We're going to do like a build up of 3 phases, but in reality, the way that you guys should use the system, or would use the system for the simplest way, is you would actually just load up the generic battle 3-phase system and start maneuvering it around Kalak and modifying it to be the way that you want it. And then everything would be pre-wired. You know, like you really maybe very likely wouldn't even have to connect any 2 wires, except for maybe just a couple at the top to get you started. And so here we go, and we have our oh my god. So remember what I said about the scenery and undos? You know what I just did? I just moved the fucking scenery. So what we're going to do is we're not going to save changes, and we're going to open. Yay. Now this obviously is not terribly painful right now, But when you have a battle that is like 3 times the size, I think that you can lock these units in place too, by the way. Like, I know that sometimes my complaints are there because I just didn't take the time to look around and see what was available. Like, I don't know half this tool. I don't know, like, I have no idea what any of the helpers do. I've really not used effects. I am going to show in an upcoming video, this is probably 3 down, a cool thing though where these units are actually, instead of having units in them, they have just waypoints, and so you can make these like kind of like race courses where like the course changes depending on how well you do and stuff like that. You know, we're just running through hoops, quite literally. But like these planes are fast, and like I think it would actually be really fun to have like real race circuits. I don't know anything about that, honestly. I've never tried it. I don't know what real airplane racing is like at all, but it just seems like it would be a lot of fun. And it'd be really fun to have multiplayer races, especially if the track was variant. And like maybe like you could have teams, and if your team was doing good, then like the track would work to your advantage. Like you'd go somewhere and it would have enemy artillery or something. Whatever. That's obviously I'm going on a tangent. Okay. So what I did is my scenery's down there. What I'm going to do first is make sure that I have my own little group for working. I always call this actors, but you call it anything you want. Like I just mean like this is the crap that's doing shit. Sorry, I'll try to curse a little less. I'm actually already trying to do that. I curse a lot. And now we're going to kind of think about like what we're going to do in general. And I know that I'm aiming for that this first phase that we're going to build is going to be Germans are going to be coming in here and wanting to set up in preparation for pushing over the bridge, because the second phase will be them pushing over the bridge. And so I'm just going to start entirely generic. And what I'm going to want is a set of, this is, by the way, to go over it again, an abreast unit. So these are like tanks for the Russians. This is air units for the Russians. This is some artillery for the Russians. And this is a column of support units like trucks for the Russians or cars. And so I'm just going to make perfect parity because we're doing a generic battle. Like these guys are perfectly set up. They're not placed yet, obviously, but we'll do that in a second. I'm just going to copy them all. This will take a moment. When I go on my tangents, I should probably do them when this is happening. And then you get an indicator of when you when it's appropriate to listen again, too. Cool. So yeah, this really might take a while. There it is. Yeah, I think I mentioned in the last video, this is something new. Like it always takes a little while to copy these big groups, but like it's in the recent build, it's actually taken a long time just to copy simple things once the mission is large. And these get quite big. Still half the size of what it used to be, but quite big. So obviously all of these are Russian right now, and we want to change that. And so the way that we're going to do that is we're actually just going to go in there like so. And this is kind of like a weird thing that I don't know, just kind of got to do sometimes. What I'm doing is I'm just grouping objects to like not care about them. So what I'm going to do first is the artillery, because I can get that out of the way the fastest. So there's 2 artillery units. I guess I should switch it to this kind of map so that you can see it. So first thing I want to do is, you know, right now I have it so like Russians are heading west and Germans are heading east in their battles. And I like to keep it horizontal at the beginning, even though this battle is going to be pretty oblique. But we'll just rotate it around. These guys are totally rotatable. These icons, by the way, turn on and off depending on activation, so you can like really see where the battle is. I think I mentioned I want to make some changes, make those nice, but not until I really understand how that crap works. So I'm just going into this unit straight up, and I'm making them all German. Needless to say, that is not the only thing you need to do. These are all Zis guns, and we don't want that. And I'm keeping this super boring. This is where you would start making changes as to like what kind of units you want in there. But I'm showing you how we're building a generic battle. Like this is something what we're building today is something I'm already providing for you pre-built. But I think that seeing it is really the best route towards understanding it. Actually, I like to use the trucks for these. But whatever, use any unit you want. I mean, that could be a tank. It doesn't matter. there are two sets. That's your map units right there, that group. There are two sets of 8 artillery, so I'm going into both of them and changing them. And you'll see that this little process is probably one of the more tedious things that you have to do in here. I hope that it is actually the most tedious, but I don't think that there's any way around it, because when you're building a mission, you're definitely going in here and touching all these units. Like, you're going to want them to be something, right? Like something specific. Like you might want, additionally, you might want very different layouts. Like right now I'm having a single abreast set, a single column set, a single airplane, and a single artillery set on both sides. Like what you actually might want is no airplanes and like 4 or 5 tank units, so like you have like 40 or 50 tanks on a side, which by the way works totally fine. The balance of how you can add units is all performance, and it's a little bit complicated, but this makes it simpler because you just have these modules, and so you can just say like, oh, you can work out, as it's not too hard, 30 tanks is worth about 10 airplanes in performance hit, give or take. And so you can kind of work that out. So like I can remove, when I'm looking at my actors, I brought in these airplanes right here, which is 5 aircraft that will always be active for the Russians, or as close to always as possible be active for the Russians. I could delete that and pull in 2 more abreasts, because 2 abreasts are equal to those 5 airplanes, especially if they're HE-111s. I don't know what the deal is with them. PE-2s hit hard too, but the HE-111s hit so hard. So cool. We turned our artillery to German. Because I got sidetracked, I'm just going to double check it. I don't remember if I set the final truck to forward. I think I did though. I did, good. But I probably didn't set these guys to packs. I know I forgot something. Yeah, check that out. We'll make these pack 40s. Maybe F-18s on the next one, who cares? We'll make these big high level artillery, whatever. Obviously I'm changing it willy-nilly because it doesn't matter yet. We don't know exactly what these units are going to be doing. That's the other thing, is you can plan very generally. It's another nice thing. So now I'm going to do these guys. These are units abreast. In here you'll find that there's A, B, C, and D. And on this one I'm actually just going to, so once you have it selected, it highlights it for you, which is nice. So now I can just go in here like this, and this makes it so much easier. And this is another reason that I stack all these on top of each other. You'll see right now. So let's make this be like here. We'll have fun with these. Those rocket launcher dudes. Germany. See what I mean? So now I'm doing B. So these are the B units. It was T-70 over there, so maybe we'll make it like a... Again, I don't really know the ground units, the specifics of them. Like, what is it that's different between the PZ3 and the PZ4? I don't really know. I mean, I can recognize them by appearance, but their actual like purpose and strengths and weaknesses, I don't know personally. So I kind of want to learn that. So now I'm going to do some bigger tanks down here for C and for D. Making them all German. It's a party. And then I know that this is boring, but we're going to walk through it just so you see them all. It doesn't take too much longer. So now we're going to do the airplanes. Oh, we need to spin all these mofos around too. So A is going to be HE-111s. Needless to say, you can like set skins and loadouts here. Like here, let's give these guys some outside bombs. Yeah, like another kind of, like when I was talking about how you could convert these into being different things, like honestly just adding a land command and setting these to the 52 is awesome. Like you could just do that and have land be their success, and then you would have a support line. In fact, I'll probably do that for this mission. I bet I'll make a support line for it. Not the one we're building on this specific, oh, I want to change their bombs on this specific video, but the mission that this collection of videos is going to build. make these like 190s. And like it really, I'm just kind of showing you that this is how you change all the units to be different things. Yeah, I did put I-16s in there, that's funny. Okay, they're gonna die. Do F4s. And so this kind of means that like, since the fighter planes are the ones that happen with C and D, it means that like when you're doing really good, in other words, like your airplanes are succeeding and not dying, like they're making it through their mission, then you're gonna have bombers come out. And you're gonna get bombers that are coming in and help your ground units, and they're gonna help your ground units a lot. And if you're losing your air war, you're gonna have fighters that will hopefully help you win back air superiority. So that's the idea of that. Needless to say, you can switch these when you're making your own missions again any way you want, and have it be the defensive units or the bombers. Like maybe you want to focus on a ground war, and like you want your defensive units to be the bombers to defend your ground units. And it all just depends on what kind of unit you set here, and where you put their waypoints, and that's it. That's all it takes. Is move the waypoints and move the units. We'll see all that on the next video. So now we have almost all German. I'm sorry, I know that this is tedious because you're watching me do the same thing again and again. Which is just carefully switch all these units to being... Where am I? There we go. To being German. But I also wanted to show you that it only really takes a few minutes to go from nothing to a working two-sided battle when you only had a one-sided setup. And let's see, what should these guys be? Let's go. I want Opal. Where is the Opal on this thing? There it is. And also, this will be done for you in a mission already. Forward. But it is something that you'll want to be able to do because, as I said, on almost all of these missions, you'll have to do it to some extent. Because you'll want to set your units to be things that aren't the defaults. Sometimes. Probably all times. And let's see, for the last one here, we'll put in like... oh, I don't know. I don't even know what that is. Okay, so now we're all German. And now we do the last phase of our setup here, which is great. So what I do at this stage, if you remember, I grouped these only so I would have less fuss to... That was like when I was looking at this big tree here, it just cut the tree in half. So what I like to do is I put the Russians up. I put their controls here. So see how you can separate these out from each other? It's great. And they're named for that. So it's easy to put back together. So then there I have all the Russian controls for this phase. I didn't pay attention to how I did it. Looks like that though. And this way I keep them in line with each other. So it'll be abreast, air, column. But I mean, this is just for organizational purposes. Doesn't really matter. Oh, right, and I most certainly want to change their names. Oh, and there's one other thing I want to change, which I'll show you. Because I added it brand new. Which is the icons. And see, then once you do this, you'll see, if you guys were paying really close attention in the first video, you'll see that what we're doing is we're constructing the format that I had in the first video, where if you'll remember, I had to unpack and repack to get us to where we had these like groups. And so see, now I can just call this like control. And it's the control for all the units. And you're going to see why I'm going to do that in a second. Makes it easier to get through this stuff. Oh, I gotta put this map on or we're gonna die with no speed. And I'll start pulling the units closer together. Don't let me forget, not that you can remind me since this is a one-way video, that I need to set those icons. We'll just call it units. Cool. And now what we're going to be able to do is we're going to be able to build all this together and combine all this together onto a single logic block. And I'm going to show you that as soon as I get done. And so see now, if you look at it, see how much better this organization is already, right? So now what I can do is I can just walk through all these maps. I have to change all these maps, and I need to change all the G ones. The Russian ones are correct to go like this. So I'm just switching the attack. Like who sees which attack. And which one sees which cover. I bet you I could do all of these at once by selecting them all, but I didn't. And now we're done. I gave those 2 for the artillery. It's going to look silly with them bunched up together on the map, but I gave them those 2 because I suspect I actually want to split that artillery up. I also suspect I want to shove more artillery in. But we're kind of pushing the limit where, like, when things spawn right now with only me in there, you'll get one and only one mission overloaded message, and it just drops below 50 SPS for just a moment. But even one more airplane in the game, and it's tight. So I don't know how much more artillery I can add, but we'll add as much as we can. Okay, so now we have all these units named. I have the icon set up. We're grouped. So like what we have done, to walk through it again, is like all we did was we pulled in an abreast unit, an air unit, an artillery unit, and a column unit for the Russians. We copied them and made them be made one side of them be German. So both sides are in parity right now. They're the same. And now what we're going to do is we're going to pull in a group called phase. And what phase is that this is going to combine all these dudes right here into a phase. I'm going to show you how. Now here's an area where there's a little bit of I'm not sure what to do entirely yet. And we're going to have a little bit of like talking about how a phase really works in just a second too. And what I mean by like not entirely sure how to do yet is I control how to spawn these units by hitting this activate and something else, and they're set right now to kind of like spawn on a very precise timer, which makes me testing the system very easy, but it makes a lot of stuff spawn all at once, and that seems to be increase the likelihood of crashes, and also at those spawn moments it hits the server pretty hard. But nonetheless, I'm going to keep that for this mission. What I'm doing is I'm just running an activate button down all of these, because what we're doing, I mean, you'll see I'm hitting the Russians and the Germans with this. We're not activating this separately for Russians or separately for Germans. This is just we are activating this phase of battle, and this phase of battle includes those 4 Russian units and those 4 German units, the abreast columns, air and ground. And again, I want to reinforce that these do not have to be like that. It could be, you could have 3 air units on the Germans and have 7 tank units on the Russians and call that it. That's probably too many units, but in fact it almost certainly is. 2 air units is enough. But you get the idea. You can break it up however it is that you like. And then here's the deactivate for the phase. And the deactivate is less sudden. It tells all the units to run. In the case of artillery, it actually just waits. It deactivates it after like 7 minutes or something. With the idea being that like hopefully everyone is away from where they are because there's nothing else going on over there by then. May not necessarily be true. All that kind of stuff, as you guys are playing this, like seeing deactivation and activation is like, still please tell me if you see it, but I probably know about it. And a lot of the time the deactivation or activation will be happening in a combat area entirely deliberately so that I can see that it is deactivating and activating correctly. And then we're going to do one more little thing here. This is these guys, isn't it? which is, so this is the success, like, so like for this whole phase, this is the controllers for all the phase, right? So like, here's all our German controllers for all German units right here, and here's all our Russian controllers for all Russian units right here. We want to control what success and loss is. And success and loss of a phase can be anything. So this is where you would determine that. In this specific instance, we're going to configure our system to be like a flow. And I'm going to call the success, so this is just random. We're probably going to change this when we do the real mission. I'm going to call the success of the entire phase on both sides to be equal to each other, to be success on the sense of their airplanes. So if their airplane units make it to the end, which with this kind of configuration is actually not terribly likely, so if it will happen, but not enough to make it happen too fast. And I will call failed condition death of supply units. How's that sound? So German fail is their German supply units, and like, so I mean, but you could make this be anything. Like we could add in some ground units that need to be attacked. I could make the death of German supply units be the success of the Russians. So like, it's really whatever you want. And these guys don't have to send a signal here. These signals just help with controlling what next phase you go to. Then additionally, I want to control a flow of these guys internally. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say this is going to be just like our last generic mission. I don't know if I set up these rules just like our last generic, but this one will be. We're going to say as the tanks succeed in their mission, they are going to improve the column. And so here is success for tanks. Tanks, control abreast, success out, and it goes to up. Up means improve, down means disimprove, weaken, or whatever. So this is going to make the tanks be more aggressive units. And it'll do that on their next cycle. And I'm going to, this is going to be a purely positive supply chain. So then the columns, as they succeed at their mission, will improve the airplanes. And if I wanted to, I could make this be a whole chain and have the airplanes improve the tanks. But I actually don't want that. And like, because I want the tanks to get more defensive if they're in trouble. And I also just don't want to add fuzz to this system because I'm testing some things. But I'm going to do precisely the same thing over here. Abreast is going to improve column. Column, which are like the supply lines, is going to improve airplanes. And it's still going to stick with airplanes are going to equal win. Failing is going to equal fail. Duh. But success of airplane will be success of the win for the success for the side, and fail of supply lines will be fail for the side. The artillery, which are these two units again, as I said, don't have outputs because I don't care about them. They don't move, and it's just not really worth the fuss. And they do a great job, and this also makes it so easy to just like throw them around. No thoughts at all. So now we're actually configured here. These guys are wired up. And what that lets me do, since that's all wired, it lets me group this. And this is like, this fits with that continuation thing that I was talking about before in the category theory, but like really this is a continuation because what we do is we have a sequence of functions and we can actually kind of bounce back to what the previous function was, and that's what that really is. But inside the concept of a continuation and all monads is a thing called a reader. And like that's kind of what we're doing here, is this state is something we can only access through these like very specific interfaces. And so like all that's grouped up now, and like we can interact with all that crap in there, but only this way. We don't want to open that up again. Not for this. We might end up doing so, but like ideally we don't. Except we don't want to open that up without question and wire anything to it. We might open it up and make changes internally, but we won't wire anything out of it, and we won't wire anything in it, or we break the system. This is the input, these are the outputs, that's it. So to fully phasize this thing, which is this thing that I brought in, is the phase always comes with a couple airfields, one for each side. And it comes with a controller that you're probably going to notice the look of. It's very, very, very similar. Do you see these guys? How much does that look like? We'll just go to it. How much does that look like that? 100%. It is. It's the same thing. These are counters. They go up and down. But this is for the level of the phase. And what's interesting about this, are different than like a regular score system, is it's not just up and down. So like this is the German score and this is the Russian score, and they're kind of independent of each other. So like all I need to signal it on the outside is I duplicated those. All I need to signal it on the outside is what sends things sorry about that. Had a little speaker problem. So I said a couple things, but they don't matter. Is what sends things up and down. And so in this case, I like to match it up because this is simple perfectly. Like I'll show you. We have success Russian. These are the Russian scores. We'll talk about that. This, whenever the Russians succeed, their score moves forward. Whenever the Russians fail, their score moves down. Whenever the Germans succeed, their score moves up. Whenever the Germans fail, their score moves down. Now, to keep things moving a little bit faster, you can do things like have fail does that, whatever, whatever. But I want it to be hard to succeed and easy to fail, because we're probably going to have fail move us through different phases. And all this, like we're getting into a little bit of heavier concepts that will be for a future video. Because essentially that's the stuff that's beyond the concept of just a phase. But right now, just know that like whatever you set to be your win and lose conditions for the Russians and the Germans should control their score on the phase, and that the score on your phase, what level you're at, determines the level of your airfield, which is down here, like what units are inside it. And right now it's like generic, so I can just tell what it is. But 0 is A, 1 is B, 2 is C, and 3 is D. And so like generally they should be less loaded out and smaller variety at D. And you'll see how that plays out in the full mission as soon as you play some. And then you generally have a system that says from here you can decide what to do with those values. Right? So like I like to take this. Basically this is going to have its own output that's separate. I think I'm not being clear all of a sudden. Our phase has, as we showed, I better back up. Our phase has the condition that if the planes succeed, then that side just got a success point. And if their supply lines fail, then that side just lost a success point. And those are used to raise and lower the overall score for the phase for that side. And since each side is controlled independently, like the Russians can go up in a score without affecting the German score whatsoever, you can set the overall win or lose of the phase to so it breaks down from those 4 values to just 2 values. Did the Russians win or did the Germans win? That's it. Only one side can win. And then you can set any one of these things, any one of these levels to be that win. So like you could say something like, if the and put in like maybe a counter, if the Germans manage to get the Russians, this is the Russian value C, like the whole phase they're at C, they've lost a few times. They've lost, their individual units have failed a few times, in particular the ones that send these signals through. Say that we put in like a counter. I forget where it is always. Where the hell is that thing? There it is. So like we could say that if they get down to C 4 times in a row, then the Germans win. And we could say that if the Germans die all the way, even once, then the Russians win. You can make it be anything that you want. For this one, we're going to do just that. If you get the Germans to D, and that means that like the whole system it's all the way down to the bottom. If you get them to D, then the Russians win. And if you get the Russians down to D, then the Germans win. It's very simplistic, but that's like the function. And so then the only thing that we have left to do, so we'll see this points into there, and that threads out to there. So these are all our units and the unit controls, how they feed in. Notice that's only 4 wires. how they feed in. And again, all this stuff will be pre-built. And what this is doing right here is, with this, is it's controlling the levels of the airfields, and these are controlling a little icon that shows up on the map right now. It just shows whether or not you're at A, B, C, or D level right now. I'll probably make it look cooler later, but that's what it's like right now. And then we have ourselves effectively a phase that does need some inputs and outputs, but they're insanely minimalistic. So a phase needs only to know which side wins and whether or not the phase is active or deactivated. We can group all those objects together, call this thing a phase, and know that we have it, that we hit this activate, and everything inside here will turn on. We hit this deactivate, and everything inside here will turn off, and it'll tell us whether or not all the things inside here have won or lost based on our conditions. And our conditions can be changed and set and modified, and that's what we're going to do in our future videos, is change and set and modify all these conditions to make them interesting. And we can lay out all our units willy-nilly as we like. And that's what we're going to do right now, right at the last thing. Make sure I'm still running smooth. Sorry, these are getting a little long, 35 minutes. Nonetheless, I'm still going to do it. I'm just going to set up really fast. And like I said, we're going to be coming in, Germans are going to be coming in here. So we're just going to do a super generic setup. And the first thing I like to set up is the abreast units. Move them over like this. If you don't remember, these guys need to be rotated to face the German route. Well, we're probably going to change them some more. And then I always turn on, even when doing these really dumb ones, just to like try to not have them like spawn in trees, you know, like, or whatever. It's kind of cool if things run through trees, that's okay, but like you don't want their tents to be also a tree. So I set up the German tank unit there, and then I'm just going to have the Russian tank unit be set just right across from it. And like how aggressive you want it to be is how aggressive you want it to be. Like you set it like this, and like it's going to drive. Here's its endpoint. It's going to drive all the way up to the source. We're going to set them back just a little bit, and I'm still going to have the map parts overlap because I want to see what that looks like. I really haven't played with the map much at all. So sorry if you have to watch some of my tests. And then we'll do the units. And here I'll show you how you'll see that the units have this, like, see how they kind of match each other there? And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to grab the artillery and put it between them. So see, check that out. So all our artillery units are between the tanks come off and go this way, and the supply units show up right here. So you can end up building up this base with a whole bunch of statics and like things that interact with each other. Basically, you can help build focal points to the battle. And so I can play with a little bit. I'm going to go like this and bring in my airplanes to cross over a touch. This is mostly so I can see how these like icons interact with each other. And then that's it. The Russians are done. They're done. I'm not touching them again, for real. And I'm going to bring in the Germans. Now see, the Germans are going to have to do something different with their column because they have a river. So I'm going to make them come up. And that's what just happened. Like now this column will move north. It's a little bit in the trees. May not have much of a choice there. Yeah, so it'll come up and supply right there. So it might actually be in a little bit more danger zone. It's also a good reason for this diagonal. On the airplanes, that is. And then we'll pull in the artillery for the Germans. And put that probably right here off to the side just a touch so it kind of defends both a little better. Got to put a little bit back because of trees. And then the German airplanes, which I don't think I did rotate around. I didn't. In fact, I gotta check rotation on this crap, don't I? We'll have German airplanes actually come in an even sharper angle. Right? Pretty cool. And then the only last thing that we have to do, there's some really ugly groups open right here. Let's set up our air bases. I keep these, I'm probably going to package this up just a touch differently, but I kept the those little icon things with the airbase just so it's kind of easier to see on the map. Again, that's mostly just because I'm testing these icons. And then we'll just rotate this guy so it's somewhat sane. You may have noticed I didn't even like set things on the ground, so we might have some like nonsense, but it shouldn't be too bad. Well, these guys take off to the south. And so I think that you can see the lack of true paying attention that's going on here, but so that all that needs to happen now is that I need to turn it on. That's it. Like, we're done. I'm going to turn on, what I'm doing right now is walking through and making sure I didn't have one of my auto, I sometimes have these deeply nested auto turn-ons and it would mess everything up. Let's go mission begin. Timer, and I talked about this in the last one. This needs to be just a few seconds. I always set it to 10 just because it's safe. Just know that all these units need a moment to initialize at the beginning and just give it to them. And so what we've just done is we've activated one phase of a battle that will run. I'm actually going to put this up and run it for real. It's probably a little absurd, but I want to see it. And thanks.